that some of the utility taxes that these communities charge were not reflected. So we needed to add that because that is paid in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And then we became aware of their rate increases for 2011. So these, in the previous one, it's 2010 rates at the other communities. This is their proposed 2011 rates. Not sure if they've passed those increases yet.
So I have a question for you about this. We're looking at doubling our water and sewer rates over, up till, what is it, 2013, it's basically, if I understand correctly?
We're going out to 15.
15, okay, thank you. So over the course of 5 years, we're going to double our water and sewer rates. Do we have a comparison of the other jurisdictions in 5 years, or what their expectations are in 5 years?
We don't. We don't know what they're proposing in future years.
I suspect they don't know.
Depends
Yes.
on where they're at in this process.
Can you just explain the term ATV, and then on the original FCS study, there's a Washougal COS as well? I can't remember what that means.
So ATV is across the board,
Oh,
just a flat
Yeah.
increase to everyone. And you'll recall that one of the deliverables for FCS is to look at kind of a different way of doing it, a different way of charging rates.
Mhm.
And they've termed this different way of doing it cost of service, COS. That deliverable hasn't been executed, will be executed in the first quarter or so next year. So we've taken that out as a comparison. It wasn't really right.
Mhm.
That was very preliminary.
Okay.
So it's not really informative for comparison purposes, but when that deliverable is executed, then we'll bring it in.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a question about that. Regarding across the board versus cost of service, wouldn't it be fair to say that a lot of what we're dealing with here is the assumption that we know what the costs are going to be roughly to provide the service? So if we know what the cost is going to be, and if the utility is going to pay for itself, then if you change how much you charge seniors versus how much you charge single-family dwellings versus apartments and so on and so forth, then how much each of those players will pay will change, but the total amount that goes in to the utility at the end of the year is going to be the same versus across the board where everybody's cost goes up 13% or whatever. Once again, the end number at the end of the year is the same. Is that roughly about the same?
Right,
Or at least intended to be.
the total, the total costs necessary to operate the utilities and maintain their integrity, these charts,
Mhm.
they don't change as a function of how you rate. So yes, the number at the end of the day is the same number. It's how you would apportion it and who would pay what share.
Right.
And it answers some of the questions I think a couple of the council members had around, are we rewarding conservation? Right now, in water, we reward non-conservation. The more you use, the better deal you get. Volume discount, typical retail model.
And along those lines, is there really a difference to the city for how much they use? I mean, how much does the increased cost to the city go up if our consumers use a lot more? Is there much of a difference?
Well, we have to pump it, treat it, and distribute it. So if it exceeds the capacity of our system, we have to grow the system. Otherwise, it's flowing through the system right now, and so if it's within the capacity, there's probably some costs as consumption goes up.
The reason why I ask that is if we do go to a cost of service system, which I think I've got an understanding of what that is where you basically say, here's a flat part where you pay $20 a month no matter how much water you use. And for every gallon that you, or every 1,000 gallons or whatever the level is that you use beyond that, we'll charge you this rate. If you do that, and if we set the bar low enough so that basically everybody's paying for some amount of usage, it encourages them to use less. But here's the tricky part with that. I mean, this is where I imagine it's going to be delivered next year because it is a complicated calculation, because once you start having people change their habits about how much they use, and if everybody conserved immediately, now we're short again, and we have to raise rates again.
I apologize to all, I've got a family emergency, I need to leave.
Should clarify that, our current rate structure for water is what you were describing, where you pay a flat amount, and then it goes, you pay less per unit in a declining block. It's a volume discount. So for the first 10 units, you pay this much. For 10 to 20, you pay less, and so on. This cost of service is kind of a different animal than that. That's our existing system. But you know, so people use what they need. If they can serve, they do pay less because it's going through a meter. If you're not using it, you're not paying for it. But we do reward volume use with lower unit cost for those higher volumes. That is the classic retail water model. Decades and decades. This other model, that's why titles of models are so difficult, because they construe different things for different folks. Cost of service is what they've called it, but I don't know how well that correlates to the narrative that describes what it is really. And I can't begin to explain exactly how that model works because I don't have experience with it. Jim?
Yeah, I could answer your question a little bit, Councilman. I know FCS uses historical data, and they look at that, they look at the cost of service structure, and basically they look at those rates, declining block, and I think what you're referring to is price elasticity of demand, is what it's called in economic terms. And, you know, if people use less water on a conservation period, FCS has actually gone back and looked at historically when that cutoff is, and they try to model that cost of service structure to fit historical data, is how they explain it to me.
Lots more to come on that one.
But the proposal that's before us is simply just to increase across the board.
Right, so in that declining block, if the first 10 units of water are 10 cents, it would go up 13.5%. The next block from 10 to 20 is 9 cents. The 9-cent rate would go up 13.5%. So just every rate goes up. So at the end of the day, for a given usage, you should see a 13.5% increase in your water bill, or that part of your bill, which is water, because it's a combo bill, as we know.
And that's compounded.
Right, the sewer piece is a much bigger number, and then the storm piece is similar to the water piece. Going through the
All right.
ops. Oh, the last piece was,
Yep, so the last three slides, we put together some comparables, or not comparables, excuse me, some, what the impact on homeowners, a hypothetical on a small restaurant, and then a hypothetical large retailer. And again, we want to make the note that these are base, for the homeowner, it's base rate only on estimates. And we listed the monthly increase per year, and then the cumulative as well. So you can see what the net effect is for a homeowner. The next slide is the hypothetical impact on a small restaurant. Again, each restaurant, business, industry in the city has different usage rates and whatnot. So these are just estimates. They're not anything concrete for each individual restaurant.